Small, simple and brutally effective. This is the A-4M Skyhawk. And today I am building Magic Factory's 1:48 scale take on a Marine Corps legend. The cockpit of the model is broken down logically and not too much. Detail is present where it needs to be and there is a good amount of it. Although I don't know if there is such a thing as enough details. The engineering is also good. All fits together nicely and my only complaint concerns the rubber seat belts. I really don't like those, at all. My approach to this build was to assemble as much as possible before I start the painting. That was facilitated by the general lack of color, but I made sure to make things more difficult with some 3-stage chipping. The Douglas A-4 Skyhawk originated in the early 1950s as a lightweight carrier-based attack aircraft, designed by Ed Heinemann. The US Navy wanted a simple, compact jet capable of delivering nuclear and conventional weapons. The Skyhawk's minimal size, delta wing and powerful engine made it revolutionary, small enough to operate without folding wings and cheap enough to buy in large numbers. Over time, the A4 proved extremely adaptable, leading to many variants for the Navy, Marine Corps, and foreign users. By the late 1960s, however, the aging platform needed modernization, setting the stage for the A4M. By the late Vietnam War era, the US Marine Corps required a more capable Skyhawk optimized for close air support. Existing A4 versions were reaching performance limits and lacked modern avionics. The Marines wanted better payload, stronger engines, improved survivability, and enhanced pilot visibility for the battlefield support. The Marine Corps emphasized durability and precision in low-altitude combat. The A4M was conceived as the final and most advanced Skyhawk. Painting the cockpit was quite straightforward, apart from a couple of areas, namely the black switchboards on the side consoles and the bezels on the instrument panel. To paint those without messing up the base gray color, I created some very fine masks using my 10-watt laser cutter. Also, as mentioned previously, I did a 3-stage chipping on a few areas. So in general, I made things slightly more complicated than they needed to be. When it comes to the weathering, I also kept things simple. A grey panaline wash to put an accent on the recessed details and for some shadows, and a buff oil paint dry brushing to pick out the edges and the raised details. In addition, I used a silver watercolor pencil to simulate bare metal chipping and also to color the switchgear. Officially introduced in the late 1960s, the A4M was developed with philosophy of maximum combat value and minimal complexity. Douglas aircraft upgraded the airframe while preserving the Skyhawk's simplicity. Structural strengthening allowed increased payloads, while new systems improved navigation and attack accuracy. The design emphasized maintainability in austere conditions, consistent with the Marine Corps expeditionary doctrine. Rather than reinventing the aircraft, engineers refined what already worked, making the A4M a culmination of Skyhawk evolution rather than a radical redesign. One of the A4M most important improvements was its engine. The Pratt & Whitney J52P408 turbojet produced nearly 50% more thrust than earlier versions. This significantly improved takeoff performance, climb rate, and payload capacity, especially from short and damaged runways. For Marines operating close to the front lines, this was critical. The extra power also enhanced survivability, giving pilots better acceleration when evading ground fire. Despite the increase in thrust, the engine remained reliable and easy to maintain, preserving the Skyhawk's reputation for toughness. The level of detail provided for the instrument panel was just too good for me to overlook. I airbrushed, made minuscule masks, dry brushed, detail painted and applied decals so that this instrument panel can take its place as the focal point of the cockpit. The A-4M introduced major avionic upgrades compared to the earlier Skyhawks. This included a new inertial navigation system, improved radar altimeter, and modernized weapons delivery computers. These systems greatly enhance accuracy in bombing and strafing missions, especially in poor weather or low visibility conditions. For close air support, precision mattered as much as firepower. The upgraded avionics allowed pilots to operate more independently from ground controllers, improving responsiveness to troops in contact and reducing reliance on visual cues alone. Chipping is one of the best ways to convey the real-world wear and tear that appears on machines. Unlike AFVs, where we can use mud, heavy damage and other terrestrial effects, airplanes are relatively clean, undamaged and in better overall shape, and that is kind of understandable. For flying machines, battle damage almost always means destruction. In these circumstances, every small hint of the daily life of an aircraft, especially in field conditions, contributes significantly towards the realism of the entire build. I would like to thank all the amazing people who support me on Patreon. You guys are awesome! The final assembly of the cockpit was a process that I enjoyed thoroughly. All the sub-assemblies finally came together to form a cohesive, well-detailed representation of the control center of an amazing machine. Perhaps the most visually recognizable feature of the A-4M is the avionics hump behind the cockpit. This enlarged dorsal fairing housed additional electronic equipment, including radios, navigation systems, and countermeasure gear. The hump slightly affected aerodynamics, but dramatically increased mission capability. Earlier Skyhawks also had humps, but the A-4M's version was the most refined. This feature symbolized the shift from a pure attack jet to a more sophisticated battlefield aircraft capable of operating in complex, information-dense combat environments. The fuselage halves closed around the cockpit, a section of the engine and the tailpipe without any issues. This, however, cannot be said about the instrument panel shroud, which consumed a lot of adjustments and still managed to cause issues down the road. The A-4M introduced a new larger canopy that greatly improved pilot visibility, an essential feature for close air support missions. Marines often operated at low altitudes over unpredictable terrain, so visual awareness was critical. The cockpit layout was also improved with the better instrument placement and enhanced pilot ergonomics. The aircraft retained manual flight controls rather than adopting fly-by-wire systems, giving pilots direct intuitive control. This helped maintain trust in the aircraft during demanding combat maneuvers and high-stress operations. After I was done masking and painting the windshield, I went ahead to glue it down. In this very moment, I knew that I damaged the windshield. Apparently, despite all the work, there was a point of contact or very small distance between the windshield and the instrument panel shroud. The capillary forces carried the glue onto the clear part. Even behind the masking tape, it was evident that I have made a significant oopsie. The A-4M retained the Skyhawk's impressive payload capacity despite its small size. It could carry over 9,000 pounds of ordnance, bombs, rockets, missiles and fuel tanks on 5 hard points. Standard weapons included Mk-80 series bombs, napalm, AGM-12 bullpup missiles, and later laser-guided munitions. Two internal 20mm cannons provided close-range firepower. This flexibility allowed the A-4M to perform multiple mission types from close air support to interdiction, often within the same sortie. The assembly of the rest of the airframe was pretty much a smooth sailing. I only had few minor issues with the intakes and the transition between the hump and the tail. Those issues I overcame with some adjustments and plenty of dry fit tests. The A-4M entered service with the US Marine Corps in the early 1970s and quickly became the backbone of marine aviation. It equipped multiple marine attack squadrons, both active and reserve. The aircraft trained extensively for expeditionary warfare, operating from short runways, highways, and forward bases. Marine pilots valued the A-4M for its reliability, responsiveness, and ease of maintenance. Although it arrived too late for the major Vietnam combat, it incorporated lessons learned from that war. During the Cold War, the A-4M squadrons frequently deployed overseas, including rotations to NATO bases in Europe and operations in the Pacific. Their mission focused on supporting ground forces in potential conflicts against Warsaw Pact forces. The aircraft's ability to operate from forward locations made it ideal for reinforcing Allied forces quickly. These deployments helped integrate marine aviation into joint and coalition planning, demonstrating that the A-4M remained relevant even as newer aircraft entered service. This kit provides a lot of variability with the nose cone position. I did not want to break up the silhouette of the aircraft, so I chose to have the nose in its closed position. Having the access hatches opened would not interfere with the shape, so I decided to take advantage of the provided internal details and chose to have the hatches opened. Survivability was a priority for the A-4M design. The aircraft incorporated armor protection for the critical systems, redundant controls, and improved damage tolerance. Many A-4Ms were later equipped with radar warning receivers and countermeasure dispensers. While it lacked the speed of newer jets, its small visual and radar signature made it harder to detect and target. In low-altitude environments, the A-4M relied on maneuverability, terrain masking, and pilot skill rather than raw speed to survive. This Magic Factory kit features a lot of small details and surface features. While all of that is awesome, I could not find any images that show the rivets depicted on the surface of this model. In my mind, it is better not to have a feature than to represent it wrongly. After painting and masking the red internal surfaces, I started black basing and covering the lower surfaces with Insignia White. This technique is quite time consuming but allows subtle tonal variation and also a great practice for airbrush control. Speaking about airbrushes, my Gallery Mobius 0.2 performed flawlessly with the fine marbling, and the Mobius 0.3 did a great job of applying smooth and consistent blending coats. If you are looking for a new airbrush, I can treat you with a 10% discount on top of what Gallery already offers on their website. More information you can find in the description. The retirement phase of the aircraft began in the late 1980s, as the AV-8B Harrier II replaced it in the Marine close air support roles. The Harrier's vertical short takeoff capability aligned better with the evolving Marine doctrine. Despite this, many pilots and maintainers regarded the A-4M fondly, considering it one of the most balanced and reliable jets ever flown in the Marines. Its retirement made the end of Skyhawk's frontline service in the US military. For the top surfaces, I decided to create more effects before the actual paint job. Using the base light Gull Grey, I did the back basing. With Insignia White, I did the panel lines and other highlights, while shaded areas I enhanced with dark grey color. During World War II, US Navy aircraft used dark blues and complex multi-tone schemes designed for low-altitude combat over the ocean. By 1945-46, this culminated in overall gloss sea blue, which worked well for piston aircraft operating at relatively low speeds and altitudes. However, the jet age fundamentally changed how naval aircraft fought. Jets flew faster, higher, and were increasingly visible at altitude rather than from the surface. The dark blue finish, effective in World War II, proved too conspicuous against bright skies and cloud layers when viewed from below or from other aircraft. Operational experience during the Korean War exposed key shortcomings of the gloss sea blue. It stood out strongly against the sky, it absorbed heat, increasing thermal stress, it offered no advantage in air-to-air visibility reduction. The naval aviation doctrine had shifted toward higher altitude strikes, interception and nuclear delivery missions. Camouflage was now about concealment against the sky, not the surface. On February 23, 1955, the US Navy formally adopted a new standard paint scheme. Upper surfaces were to be light Gull Grey, initially non-specular, later gloss. Lower surfaces were Insignia White. This became the standard for all carrier-based US Navy and US Marine Corps combat aircraft. The light Gull Grey was chosen because it reduced contrast against the bright sky and haze, it weathered evenly rather than blotchy, and balanced visibility for formation flying with reduced detectability. The slightly warm of neutral tone proved more effective than pure light grey, especially in maritime lighting conditions. Insignia White served multiple purposes: reduced visibility when viewed from below against clouds, reflected solar radiation lowering internal temperatures, introduced flash and glare from nuclear detonation effects, an important Cold War requirement. The light Gull Grey over white scheme worked exceptionally well with bright national insignia, squadron tail arts, and colorful carrier air wing markings. Visibility for deck operations and air traffic control remained excellent, which was critical during the high sortie rates of the Vietnam era. Originally applying the light Gull Grey as non-specular finish, it shifted. In 1971, it officially changed to gloss light Gull Grey. Gloss improved corrosion resistance and durability. Weathering generally dulled the gloss in service. Many aircraft flew with mixed appearances depending on the repaint cycles. By the late 1970s, radar and infrared signature reduction mattered more than visual concealment. Combat shifted towards beyond visual range engagements. The tactical paint scheme in multiple grays replaced the light Gull Grey over white. The light Gull Grey over white paint scheme remains the longest serving naval aircraft camouflage in US history. For the armament, I decided to experiment with pre-paint effects using white oil paint applied by stippling and dry brushing. That was followed by several light layers of the base color. While subtle, this approach provided tonal variation and increased the visual surface texture. With 9,000 pounds of external storage capacity spread across 5 hardpoints, the Skyhawk was able to carry a remarkably diverse weapon load for such a compact aircraft. Its armament centered on conventional air-to-ground ordnance, including Mark 80 series general-purpose bombs, cluster munitions, and napalm canisters, making it highly effective in the close air support role. The A-4M could also employ rocket weapons such as the 2.75-inch folding fin aerial rockets and the 5-inch Zuni rockets for area suppression and armored targets. For precision attacks, it was compatible with guided weapons like the AGM-12 bullpup missile, and later in service laser-guided bombs when supported by external designation. Two internal 20mm cannons provided reliable strafing and self-defense capability, while external fuel tanks and electronic countermeasure pods could be carried to extend the range or improve survivability. Together, these options gave the A-4M exceptional flexibility, allowing it to tailor its loadout precisely to Marine Corps battlefield requirements. The Magifactory kit provides a great selection of armament options, including highly detailed triple and multi-ejection racks. Marine Attack Squadron 131, or VMA-131, was originally commissioned on the 1st of November 1943 as Marine Bombing Squadron 131 during World War II. The squadron flew PBJ-1 Mitchell medium bombers, the Marine Corps version of the B-25, conducting anti-shipping, bombing and patrol missions in the Pacific Theater. After World War II, the squadron was deactivated but later recommissioned during the Korean War era, reflecting the rapid expansion of the marine aviation. In the 1950s, it transitioned into the jet age, operating early Marine Corps jet attack aircraft and shifting its mission toward tactical ground attack and close air support. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, the squadron was redesignated VMA-131 and began flying Douglas A-4M Skyhawk, the aircraft most closely associated with its identity. As an A4 unit, VMA-131 became a Marine Corps Reserve Squadron based in NAS Dallas, Texas, and later NAS Fort Worth. During the Vietnam War, VMA-131 served as a stateside reserve attack squadron, providing trained pilots and maintainers to active duty units and maintaining combat readiness. Although it did not deploy as full squadron to Vietnam, its personnel directly supported combat operations. Throughout the 70s and 80s, VMA-131 flew successive Skyhawk variants, culminating in the A-4M, the most advanced Marine Skyhawk. In this role, the Diamondbacks specialized in close air support, battlefield interdiction, and expeditionary attack, training to reinforce active Marine forces during major conflicts. With the drawdown of the A-4 Skyhawk and restructuring of the Marine Corps Reserve Aviation, VMA-131 was deactivated in 1998, marking the end of over 5 decades of service. The squadron is remembered as a highly respected reserve attack unit and one of the last Marine squadrons to operate the Skyhawk. Whenever I see that a kit provides decals from Italy's very own cartographer, I know I am in for a treat. Despite some challenging areas, like the vortex generators on the wings, I was able to achieve good, if not excellent, decal conformity to the surface details. Weathering. Oh, the weathering. The thing that no one seems to agree on. Okay, to each its own, but my goal here was to create the look of a well-used aircraft, but also well-maintained. In the light of what I already told you about the Diamondbacks, maybe I went a bit overboard, but in modeling, visual interest is probably as important as realism, if not more. Of course, this is my own opinion, and you can feel free to tell me how wrong I am in the comments. With the washes done, I applied MRP semi-matte varnish, one of my favorites. Gorgeous finish with minimal effort. I coated the top of the plane and let everything else cure before moving on. I used Starship Field to stipple some grime onto the wings and the hump area. Also started outlining the access panels and added a bit to the cockpit sides. Using the same technique, I outlined the panel line that splits the fuselage to expose the engine. For the smaller panels, which were too tedious to surround with oil paint and then blend the paint, I just slapped on some quantity and then blended that paint in, And finally, I removed the excess oil paint inside the panel using some mineral spirits and a brush. I turned my attention to the underside of the airplane. Still working with O's here, and letting each step settle properly helps with the final look. Next up was some paint distress using a graphite pencil. I chipped the paint on the edges, especially on the tears and the mirrors. Those parts see a lot of action. MRP semi-matte went down again. This layer seals all the weathering, tones down the graphite sheen so the chipping is more visible, and preps the surface for the next effects. I think that here you can clearly see where I tried to ruin the entire build, and probably succeeded to some extent. Okay, whatever, we live to learn. I use a gunmetal paint marker from Gallery on the brake discs and some probes. Final major weathering step: rain marks and speed streaks. For this I used ivory black watercolor pencil and a mix of brushes. Subtle but very effective. I glued the pylons underneath so that the streaking would look more natural and cohesive. They are site specific, so double check orientation if you are building this kit. All the control surfaces got streaks too. Should you wish to enjoy my videos without advertisements, follow the progress on my builds day by day, or get free access to 3D printable assets, visit my Patreon page and explore what the different tiers will give you. Join the community. I installed the ram air turbine doors and did some gun blast staining using a mix of Mr. Rapid Thinner, MRP flat varnish, and a little bit of MRP NATO black. I used the same mix on the opposite side and behind the outlet that gets pretty dirty in most reference photos. Ivory black pencil again, this time to suggest movement around the elevator assembly. Now onto the final assembly of the Skyhawk. The installation of the flight control surfaces went fairly smooth. The A-4M Skyhawk's legacy lies in its efficiency, adaptability and effectiveness. It proved that small, simple aircraft could deliver outsized combat value. As the final and most advanced Skyhawk variant, it embodied decades of combat lessons and engineering refinement. The aircraft influenced future attack aircraft design, particularly emphasis on close air support, maintainability and pilot visibility. Today, the A-4M stands as a classic example of smart military engineering, affordable, little and perfectly suited to its mission. The gear leg assembly is well engineered. The main legs are keyed so that there are no unfortunate mishaps, and the fit is reasonably tight. The forward gear leg needs more delicate touch because the room for maneuvers is limited. There are no major issues with the installation of the main gear doors. Again, nicely engineered. But some of the tolerancers are too tight. Also, it becomes quite crowded here, and this affects the ease of assembly. Anyhow, look at those details. I would be hard pressed to find any reason to add aftermarket items. Mounting the bombs on the ejection racks was very easy and hassle-free. The locating pins on the bombs get into the corresponding ports in the racks with excellent precision. A tiny amount of super glue dropped inside the ports before the assembly is all it takes to hold them together. The pylons accepted all the payload without any trouble, just some CA glue and maybe a small amount of carefully applied pressure. The rear view mirrors come with nice sheet of pre-cut mirror surface stickers. Next, I installed the access doors on the nose. At this point, it is extremely difficult to handle the model. There are many pieces eager to be broken. After a bunch of small antennas, pitot tubes, the photo-etch AOA probe, and the engine access panels got installed onto the model, well, there it is, in its full glory. If you want to see how I made the display base and painted the figure, I will leave some links in the description. I have to say that building the Skyhawk from Magic Factory was a real pleasure. For me, this is the right scale, and the kit provides the right amount of detail so that I can build the model without any aftermarket details. Easy and hassle-free. And isn't the scooter a good looking airplane? Well, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, happy modeling, fellas.